It'll just be us, like old times.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Tigers Tonight. And I should just say hello, everyone, because some of you are probably not watching this in the evening. John Maddox, Larry Marley, Bryan Moss should be along here shortly. As we have hit the bye week, a much needed bye week for the Tigers. Of course, the Tigers will come in now with a record of 4-4. They are 2-3 in league play, and it's been a tough 3-game losing streak for Memphis. And I'm joined now by the best co-host in all the land, the one and only Larry Marley, who is actually in the palatial Marley Manor.
I am, and we are recording early because today is my mother's 77th birthday. Happy birthday, Mom. And we are taking her out to dinner tonight. And so I appreciate the guys letting us tape early tonight. And yeah, we're on a 3-game losing streak. And you know, I posted something on Twitter the other day that the thing that concerned me after the Houston game was we'd gone on losing streaks the last 3 years. And it was a concern. And that's exactly what has happened, is that even though we had a double-digit lead, three-score lead in East Carolina, we still lost. This last game, and I'm going to break this down for you, despite the final score, this game was over at the half. And I'm sure we'll break that down for everybody, but I will break down for you why it was over and why whatever happened in the second half really didn't matter.
Well, we're going to get into all the talk about the season so far here in just a few minutes, but let's talk a little bit about that Tulane game. And I understand where you're coming from, but I will also say that I was very impressed with the fight that they showed in the second half. I know the game was out of reach realistically, but, you know, I was really impressed that they came out and at least made an effort, because I felt going into halftime that this was going to be 49-7, 56-14, that Tulane could have basically named their number. But, Memphis kind of hung in there and didn't let that happen. And let's kind of look at some numbers here from the second half. Let's see if I can pull. I'm not sure I can pull those from here. But, Memphis did a really nice job. Let me see if I can pull up. Sorry, you guys are getting real-time, actual how I have to do this here. Let's see, final stats. Yeah, and Jeb brings up a good point, and this is probably somewhat true as well. Tulane showed kind of who they are in the second half, because they didn't really do anything other than Tajay Spears running for 125 yards. Michael Parrott was 20 of 29 for 159 yards and a touchdown. I mean, they didn't wow you offensively. They had 344 yards. They were almost perfectly balanced. Rush to pass. They were 6 of 14 on third down. Memphis was 4 of 14 on 5 of 14 on third downs. Memphis was 4 out of 4 on fourth downs. Tulane 1 out of 2. The two teams ran 70. Memphis ran 74. Tulane ran 70 plays. But when you look at the two halves, Larry, it could not have been more different. And I always say it, and it was very true in this game. You're not going to win the game in the first quarter, but you can sure as hell lose it in the first quarter, and that is exactly what happened to the Tigers. You're still muted there, Larry.
Yeah, that helps when you can actually hear what I'm saying. Sorry about that. So you mentioned the two phases of the game. You mentioned offense and defense, but you didn't mention special teams, which is really where we lost this game.
No comment.
Yeah, well, I mean, the reality was the kickoff return, or was it a punt return? It was a punt return for a touchdown. The muff punt, those turned into 21 points or 14 points. And then, once again, Bryan had the date wrong
No.
for everybody. um, but
Well, in
but
his defense, we did talk about recording yesterday and then just didn't
we
do it in
did,
his defense.
and this is mostly my fault. And I do apologize. But all kidding aside, so special teams did in fact have a huge effect on this game. And those 14 points, obviously people go, well, you get those 4 people. That's not how this works. Once they had the lead, once they have a 35-0 lead, a couple of things happened. And I texted you guys at the half and I told you that this would happen. I said, Memphis will come out and they'll play well in the second half. And I said that because there's no pressure. The pressure's off. Calipari, when he was here, said something similar to this. He said, it's easy to play. It's easier. Let me say that back up. Because you're right, John. It could have gotten out of hand, and it didn't. But it's easier to play when you don't have any pressure. It's easy to play when you're just sort of, okay, it's 35-0. We're just going to go out there and let it fly. And if it gets, if they score more, then that's fine. But let's just see what we can do. Well, it's easy to make plays at that point because there's no pressure. You got to be able to make plays, when you're up and the other team is trying to take the momentum back. And you got to be able to make plays when you are trying to come from behind and you're trying to take the momentum. That's when they start doing that, then I'll feel better about the situation. But he is Willie Fritz, and you're exactly right, Jeb. That's exactly where I was going. Willie Fritz, this was a master's class in how you handle a big lead. He didn't do anything. The only thing I disagreed with
was the fourth down call was so
the fourth down was awful. But that's really the only thing he did in the second half. That was everything else. He was like, you're gonna go all the length of the field, and we're gonna they kind of shelled up defensively. Didn't really do a whole lot. So they didn't try to blitz and get out of position. They just stayed in front of us and made us drive the ball down the field. Now, we did do that. We didn't make any mistakes, but guys, that was just a master's class in we're gonna run the time off the clock. Somebody texted me the other day and went, "Oh, well, they could have been within 3." Yeah, with 14 seconds to go.
But still, I mean, I get where you're coming from, and since Brian's not here, I'm going to play positive Paul for a minute. I get it, but still, you look at the second half. Memphis outscores them 28-3. They have the ball for 9 more minutes. They outgain them 331-96. The difference in the game is literally those 14 points. And I know what you're saying. Well, you don't know how that's, but because the punt return and the muff punt happened within 2 drives of one another. And when those things happen, it's just deflating. So they came out in the second half. They averaged 6.5 yards a play. Tulane averaged 3.8. Tulane couldn't run the ball. They piled up some yards right towards the end. They had 84 rushing yards in the second half. But, this comes back to 2 special teams plays and Memphis's inability to run the football. And, Memphis for the game had just 103 yards on the ground. Tulane had 186. And I mean,
Seth is your leading rusher, guys.
Yeah. And that's a problem. And we're going to talk about that here in a minute when we get more into the meat of the game. But Asa Martin was not available. He was injured. He kind of fought. Coach Silverfield told us in the press conference after the game that he fought through injuries to get through the East Carolina game, that he was hurt. Sounds, we don't ever get the facts of the matter, but it sounded to me like a concussion type situation where he said we held him out for safety. So that's a whole nother story. If you let him play in the East Carolina game with a concussion and now all of a sudden it's safety, that's neither here nor there. I'm the point. I don't care anymore, frankly.
Well, it could have happened in practice too.
Yeah, I'm tired of hearing it. Well, he said he played hurt in the East Carolina game. He didn't go into any details. But, I'm tired of hearing about injuries and frankly not getting information about them in a timely manner. But, yeah, you're right. Seth Hennigan, 13 carries, 42 yards. That, man, Larry, that just continues to pile up. And the other thing it does is it starts to pile up wear and tear on Seth's body. You know, I mean, 13 carries in this game. And I think it was 9 or 10 the last East Carolina, and 8 or 9 before that. Like, he put on 20 pounds this offseason. And kind of an aside, he was joking. He said he put on 5 more. They went out to eat Friday night, and he said, I put on 5 more pounds Friday night in New Orleans.
That can happen there.
Yep. It can happen in a heartbeat. You know, and so he bulked up a little bit, and he said, you know, I knew I needed to be stronger, and here he is, the man, the myth, the legend. The calendar misschedules here, and all the changes. And Bryan, how in the world are you, my friend?
Doing pretty good. You know how us Northeasterners are. We just don't know anything.
That's right. Gets a little cold up there, and the brain goes out. But anyway, we're just talking about Seth, and you know, he looks banged up. I mean, 8 games in, everybody is hurt. You just hope nobody is injured. And yeah. Larry, being a player, and Bryan, you played, can tell you there is a wide gulf between being hurt and injured. Everybody is hurt this time of year. He's just walking a little slower, but man, just these carries, and Jeff's right. He only took 1 good hit, but boy, that hit he took was a hit. But it's still it just tends to pile up on you as the season wears on. And you know, adding 20 pounds is great, and it's been great. You know, I will say, Bryan, it's been great that he's been willing to run the ball this year, because that was kind of one of the knocks on him last year.
Yeah, no, it's definitely helped. I think it keeps the defense honest when you have that, you know, not necessarily a dual threat quarterback, but if a quarterback who can run, I mean, defensive, you know, the linebackers, the defense, they have to be conscious of that. Oh, this guy could run. So if it causes the defense to hesitate or think a little bit, then you have the advantage. So, but Seth, yeah, I think it's because of the way the season has gone. I don't know if it's particularly an injury. I just think the stress of it all seems to get into him a little bit, because, like, I mean, I've wrote before, we've talked about it. I mean, you're so close. Was it 14 points that I calculated, being away from 7-1? I mean, yeah. I'm not in his classes or anything like that on campus. So, I mean, if there are anything like what we're seeing online, you know, oh, Silverfield needs to go, bring back Fuente, blah, 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 blah. I mean, that's a 17, 18, 19-year-old kids. And I mean, that will definitely affect you.
Yeah, but that's another argument for another time. But, you know, you look at Seth's numbers. He has carried the ball. And now this includes sacks. I mean, being fair, he has carried the ball 95 times this season. The next highest carries are Brandon Thomas at 67. Seth has gained 368 yards rushing. Now he's lost 148. So he is actually, in yards gained, he leads the team. Well, Larry, that's a problem. This ain't Navy.
Right. And look, the other problem is that if you're going to scheme our offense, and Bryan, you've talked about this, one of the things about our offense is it's sort of predicated on the ball fakes and the little drag routes over the middle where the linebackers sort of have to be drawn up. And that's just not happening. And that's one of the issues that we've seen. So if you watched, one of the reasons why we had so much success in the second half was because the linebackers were just basically falling back. And they were not. I mean, we were throwing the ball underneath. If you watch the touchdown to Skates, the linebackers were basically just dropped back. Skates caught the ball. The linebacker had a misstep, and he split them right in the middle, and that was the touchdown. My point in all this is, John, that you can't play the way we want to play offense if you can't run the football at least some. And right now, we are the same, and you're going to get into this. We're running it the same way we did last year, which is bad.
You take Seth out. We had, 20 carries for, 63 yards. If you take Seth's yardage out. 61 yards, sorry. that's not a recipe for success. I'm just doing the math in my head. That's a little less than 3 yards a carry, or right at 3 yards a carry. Memphis ended up, they averaged 3.1 yards a carry.
We would have multiple single plays in a game with more yardage before.
Yeah, I was going to pull that stat and I didn't. We are not explosive this year. There is nothing, super explosive about Memphis. But I do want to say, kind of going to play positive Paul here for a second. Yes, we were missing Asa Martin, but I was really impressed with how well Sutton Smith handled that. Sutton came in the game, averaged almost 5 yards a carry. Bryan, it was kind of a pushed into action. He returned a couple kicks. I was really impressed with how well he played.
Yeah, he's a dynamic kid. Even in high school, all the coaches were excited to see him. I've heard good things about him during the fall camp. So, it shouldn't come to a surprise that that he did well. But if he's doing well, stick him out there. Keep him out there. I have the philosophy of stick with the hot hand. Take away Seth's numbers, and Smith had he's your leading rusher. I know it was only 28 yards, but still, feed him the ball, see what he can do. Put him out in the open, get some screen routes to him. The kid is dynamic, and that's I think we all agree that that's what Memphis has been missing the past few years, that dynamic running back. And he could be that next dynamic running back. Let him go. See what he can do. If you burn a red shirt, you burn a red shirt. But what do you got to lose at this point?
And you say, yes, Seth was the leading rusher, but if you take some of Seth's carries and give them to Smith, then how does that change? But it was just a remarkable tale of two halves, and Memphis is yet to put 60 minutes together. Like, it's just not happened. But at least this time they started slow and finished fast. So, now as you head into the bye week, and I asked Coach Silverfield about it, and he said there's never a good time for a bye week. And I vehemently disagree with that. This team needs a bye absolutely more than just about anybody. And I asked Seth, and he's said 100% I need a bye week. He said we need to rest. We need to reset. He said that several times. We need to rest our mind and reset. And I'll tell you the other thing they probably need to do, not that there's any infighting or anything, they probably need to be away from each other for a couple days, because as Larry and Bryan, I forget which one was talking about it, hearing all the noise, the social media noise, like idiots like us and talk radio folks that are, got the pitchforks out, that wears on you, and we're all married. We know how this works. The wife is nagging at you a little bit, and finally you snap, and you don't mean to, but it's just one of those things.
Mean to.
I don't, and my wife's not even listening, so I don't mean to. I'm sorry, sweetie, for something I may do in the future. But no, I think they just, this time away from one another. And Larry, from your playing days, as much as they're brothers and as much as you love your teammates, my God, are you sick of each other by this point in the season?
Well, and
Larry, real quick. Hey, Larry, real quick before you start, Larry, back in his play, you would get a break because there was no social media back then. So now kids nowadays, they don't get a break. So, they're hearing it, but they're also consistently reading it if you're on your phone.
You could actually just sort of get away from that even during the season. You didn't have to. You would hear it on campus. The year we went 3-8 or whatever, we would hear that crap on campus. But we didn't really have a whole lot of junk that we had to put up with the way these kids do. So you're right. And John, you hit the nail on the head. You got that one guy who is constantly like the rah-rah guy. And I got to tell you, and this, I swear this, I'm not talking about you, Bryan. We do make fun of you, but there is literally that guy who was always like, come on, guys, let's get it up. I'll tell you what, after a 3-game losing streak, you want to kill that guy. You really do. And I'm not going to say any names. I can see his face right now in my face. I can just remember him. We had gone on a long losing streak, I think 5 games in a row. And he's like, rah, rah, and finally somebody said, would you please shut up? and it's look, you're right, John. Like these things they build, and getting away from each other is a great thing. The other part to this to reset is to sort of clear your mind and get back to the basics because everybody's got like all these advice. It's sort of like your golf swing. You just can't get your golf swing right. Sometimes you just need to get away from everybody and just go take a few practice swings and just go to the basics. And I think that's where the Tiger team is right now. They need to get back to the basics, especially in special teams where they were better earlier in the year, and now you've seen a decided drop off the last 3 or 4 weeks. Starting with the return against the Houston team, the special teams has just not been very good. And guys, I got to tell you, I agree with you, John, 100%. I cannot imagine a team that needs a bye week more than this Tigers team.
Yeah, and back to special teams, it is indicative of the last 2 years to me. Last year, it was field goal kicking. We couldn't kick field goals. We had to go for. I looked it up. Like we went for, we on fourth downs last year. We went like 85 times for it on fourth down, and we're only, I think, 40 or 50 this year because we couldn't kick the ball and we knew we couldn't. And it flat out cost us 3 games last year. So we go out and we get a field goal kicker and we get that fixed. And not to give away the lead or anything, but you want to talk about my most valuable player for the year, it's probably Chris Howard. But you fix that. And now this is broken. And all right, so we're going to fix this. And then it's like I love when people tell me, I don't have a car note. I own the car. It's paid for. And the car is in the shop every 2 months. Like, no, you don't pay the bank for the car, but it ain't like the car is free. And it's kind of like that with Memphis football. The water pump goes out. You go out and you fix the water pump. The gas tank gets a leak. The belt slips, a spark plug. Like it seems like every week, and Bryan, you said it last week, little things, I knew when the punt returner caught the ball. I knew when Jaquan Johnson caught that football, he was gone because you could see it. By the way, a weird vantage point at Ullman. I kind of liked it because you're kind of down low, but it was kind of weird. You couldn't see like the all 22, but you could really, this is going to sound strange. And unless you've been on the field with them, you don't know. You could see how big and fast and strong the players are from that vantage point. And the second he caught that ball, you saw the wall develop to the other side. And I told Frank Bonner to sit next to me, like, he's gone. Like, this is a house call. And then on the muffed punt, there was some talk. I went back and watched it. It could have been kick-catch interference. It was close.
Should have been to me.
Yeah, it was really close. But, I will say this. They didn't call it the entire game. So they were consistent. And there were a couple times that we were pretty close too. Like, and that's such a subjective, hard thing to call because, you don't have a halo rule really anymore. It's just kind of subjective.
Get away from it, kid.
Yeah. Poison. But to Eddie Lewis's credit, 3 catches, 94 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, after the muff punt.
Well, and look, the first half was just like whatever could go wrong did go wrong, right? I mean, we had the tip drill. Colby Drake fumbles the ball on a drive. We had the trip drill interception. Like, guys, like it was literally like quicksand. Like you're in quicksand, you just can't get out. But let's say it for what it was. They came out and they punched us dead in the mouth, and we didn't respond. And then they hit us again and again and again. And the Colby Drake fumble.
I ain't going to blame that kid.
No.
He got his world rocked. Wow, he got rocked.
I agreed. Where I was going with that was this was a focused Tulane team that came out to prove a point in this game. They came out to beat our brains in. And defensively, they were focused, laser focused. And offensively, they played great in the first half. And look, you're up 35-0. They probably had a little bit of a letdown. Memphis was trying not to get embarrassed, and the second half was what it was. But I will simply tell Tiger fans this: don't get tricked. Yes, we didn't get embarrassed, but we still got our ass beat. And don't let the second half, don't fall into that trap, guys, of, well, but at least we didn't get, they could have been worse. You still got your ass beat.
But we showed heart. Like
we did.
That's been a problem a couple of times this year, where we just looked like, I always say it, before the Houston game, you look at that Houston sideline and they look like they would rather be 1,000 places other than Memphis. You didn't see that in this. You saw it in the first half a little bit after we got hit in the mouth, literally and figuratively. But in the second half, you didn't see any of that. The kids came out focused. And, again, Bryan wasn't here early, so I had to play positive Paul and talk about, how good the response is. We did get punched in the mouth, and we did not answer when we needed to answer. It was like it was like in an MMA fight where you get rocked and then you get rocked again and you get rocked again. And all you're thinking is, let's survive this round and get to the next round. And I think that was kind of Memphis's thing, was like, let's just get to the half. And then we kind of got our legs underneath us a little bit, and came out in the second half. And, it's the question, Bryan, where's that team been all year?
Yeah, I mean, just offensively, I mean, you had 4 out of the first 5 drives were 3-and-outs. You did not have a 3-and-out in the entire second half, and it just
how they were playing defense, guys. How they were playing defense.
But but that's fine.
Memphis was executing better. I mean,
yes.
Agreed.
Yeah. And
but hold on.
It's
a combination, is all I'm saying.
But hold on, Larry. This is a team that just blew 2 3-score leads. So, you could say the same thing about ECU and Houston. Well, they got their ass kicked. Well, they just came back. And you said earlier that if we'd have scored that last touchdown, there only would have been 14 seconds left. Well, the way that game was going, and I want to talk about the most egregious special team play of the game that we haven't even talked about yet. But the way that thing's going, you probably recover the onside kick and you have a chance to at least tie. The most egregious special teams play that is unforgivable to me was the onside kick, where no one looked at the football. Memphis could have recovered that. 3 guys were running right towards it and nobody looked up for the football. Nobody. And that was inexcusable. That was just there's no excuse for that. When you're running onside, there are a couple guys, their job is to go out and knock the crap out of one of the guys that might catch the ball, but there's always 1 or 2 guys that their only responsibility is to get the damn ball, and we didn't even try. And that, man, I slam my pen down. That made me furious, because there was no I think it was Rock Taylor. I think it was Taylor and somebody else. Like, the ball almost hit him. Like 15, that was the Noah Grant could not have, or Tanner Gross, I forget which one kicked it, could not have executed an onside kick any better. Like, they got the one little hop and then the second big hop, and we didn't go after the ball, and I was really disappointed. So, Larry, I get your point, but I think, again, Bryan's rubbing off on me here. When you look at the first half and you go punt, fumble, punt, interception, and also in the first half, Tulane goes touchdown, punt, touchdown, punt, touchdown. And their second half looks like punt downs, which is one of the absolute dumbest calls I think I've ever seen. There was no reason to go for it on 4th down there, none whatsoever. Field goal, punt. Like, a lot of folks are going to want to put this on the defense, and not to me. Special teams and
No,
crappy
you
offense
could
first half.
the folks that try to blame the defense for the first half. I mean, the defense was. I mean, how much were they on the field in the first half? I mean, it seemed like they couldn't even get a break, especially when the Memphis offense was going 3-and-outs. Nearly every single time. But I know I'm always the positive Paul. I mean, you look at that second half and season. I guess if there was a theme for this season, to me, the theme would be what if. What if Hastings caught that interception,
But I
against
mean, we played the
Houston.
what if game last year too, Brian, and
I wrote about this.
I'm going crap.
The what ifs last year. I don't know if you read that article. There was 34 points away, or 30 something points being away from
31.
7-1.
Yeah,
31 points being away from 7-1. This year is 14.
But
So
let's get into that for a minute. I think we can kind of put a wrap on the Tulane game here. I do want to mention, you mentioned not getting off the field in the first half. Tulane was 5 of 9 on third down and had the ball for 21 Memphis, and Memphis had it 21 minutes, and Memphis had it for 9. So there's why the defense gave up 248 yards, right? Like, you just can't stay on the field. So let's move on. And for those who don't know, Bryan wrote a good article today in his positive
Paul piece.
I'm going
to have to create the name Positive Paul as the author for some of these articles I write.
And to your credit, you are absolutely right. Memphis is 14 points away from being 7-1. But I responded to that, and what is frustrating to most of us sane, rational folks, and I'm not talking about what my buddy Andy Austin used to call the all you got to do crowd, which is all you got to do is fire the coach. Just fire the coach and everything will be fantastic. Bench the quarterback, everything will be great. I think what frustrates people the most is that we are the exact same team that we were last year. And here is statistically how we are. Last year, through 8 games, Seth Hennigan was 172 out of 280. That's 61%, 2,500 yards, 18 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Through 8 games, average 318 yards a game. Through 8 games this year. And to be fair, I skipped the UCF game with him last year because he obviously didn't play. He was hurt. This year, he's 179 out of 276, 65%. 36 yardage, 15-5, 280 yards a game. It's the same quarterback. The 2021 opponents, I did not go through and break down their records through 8 games and all that. Last year, our schedule, 50 of 50. The 8 teams we had played at that point, they were 50 and 50. 50% on the year. This year, the teams we've played are 31 and 30, 51%. So we're statistically the same. We've basically played the same teams. But here is why I think this year is quite a bit different and is pretty damning, in my opinion. Our home attendance last year, on average, was 33,258. If you pull out Mississippi State, it's 30,000, 29,856. It's 26,800 this year. And that may not sound like a big difference. But our first game was 32,000. We've had 2 crowds, a 23 and a 28. And it was a sellout Saturday. It wasn't full, but we'll say, for argument's sake, it was 30,000. That is likely the biggest crowd we will see the rest of the year. And that is where it's different. I think Memphis is teetering on apathy. And the other problem that a lot of Memphis fans have is you look at the same mistakes being made over and over again, like on that last drive. Why are we substituting when you're in a 90-second hot drill? Why are you substituting? Because that does 2 things. It runs the clock and it gives Tulane a chance to substitute. It was silly. We shouldn't have done it. To be fair, I should have asked about that in the post-game presser, but I decided not to. So you're making a lot of those mistakes. It seemed like we had no sense of urgency on that last drive. Just silly little things over and over again. And then the other part, Bryan, that is most concerning, We're coming off 3 consecutive best recruiting classes in school history, and we're the same team again.
2, the one you're currently in would be the
Yeah.
third best, but they're not on the field yet.
So back to back,
So,
2
yeah,
best
back
in
back
school
to
history.
back. But how many of those kids that are in the back to back? That's one thing that I'll an article that I will do. How many of those back to back best recruiting classes ever are actually contributing yet because they're young?
What,
That-
the guys you're
No,
rolling out there have
Seth?
got you to 4 and 4.
At this point, if you were in the one 2 years ago, you're probably going to be contributing. Certainly by this point, you're contributing. Now,
Well,
what is
you're a sophomore.
well, you could be you could be a sophomore, you could be a redshirt freshman. Either way,
Mhm.
but either way, you're contributing. Now, to what extent are you contributing? I mean, if you could play, you're contributing. I don't know how else to say that. I would fully expect you to see, especially on. Here's where I'm going with this, Bryan. Where you usually start, and this will happen to me, where you usually start contributing is on special teams.
Yep.
But that's not what Memphis does. Memphis
Memphis plays a
Then
lot
we're
of
doing
starters.
it wrong.
Yeah.
Period. Because what you do, where kids learn how to play and where they learn the intensity of the game is on special teams. You go out there and that's where you learn the speed of the game. You don't learn the speed you don't throw it normally unless he's like an all-timer. You don't throw a kid out on the field and go, hey, go cover, Terrell Owens sitting over there, which by the way, I actually saw somebody try to do. But you don't say that. You say, hey, I want you to go down on special teams. And that's where you learn the speed of the game and the speed of what what contact is really like, a difference between high school and college. And then they work you in, slowly into like playing in the actual game. And my point in all this is our special teams, especially our coverage, has regressed greatly over the last 2 years.
Yeah, and I'll give you an example of what you're talking about. That's all D'Angelo Williams did his freshman year was return kicks. That's it. So I don't think he saw the field.
Well,
I don't remember.
He did, but it was limited because I can't remember who the running back we had before. But yeah, I mean, he basically he played in the Tulane game, ironically enough, a lot. But he only had one 100-yard rushing game his freshman year, and that was, I think the Tulane game.
But I'll also say what Coach Sales told me one time, and he was talking about basketball. But one of the lessons he taught me 2 lessons. Number 1, nothing good ever happens after midnight, and number 2, there are 3
I disagree.
There are Dante Brown. That's it. He was the guy in front of D'Angelo.
Thank you. Yes, Dante Brown.
The good thing about freshmen is they're too stupid to be scared. And number 3, at this point in the season, there's no such thing as a freshman. So, Bryan, I will be very curious to see like snaps played for these last, especially probably not fair to do last year, but the 2020 class. I'd be very interested to see how much they've contributed, just even if it's not yards or whatever. I mean, outside of Seth, obviously Seth got thrown to the wolves literally. But I'll be curious to see.
Yep. There's one starter on offense, Seth. One starter on defense, Greg Rubin. We're part of that class that are starting. I'll have to go through, check,
but
backups.
My whole point with that comes, why is that? If this was, and it was a super talented class, why are those guys not able to see the field like that? And whatever it is, are they not as good of players they thought we were, or as we thought they were? Are they not as, are they not being coached and not being, developed? Whatever that reasoning is where the concern of a lot of Memphis fans come in, because, you ballyhoo a recruiting class, and well-deserved, by the way. I never thought I'd see the day that Memphis would have recruiting classes in the 40s. Like that, it still blows my mind, because I remember days when there were FCS programs that had better recruits.
We were in the 110s.
Yeah, and there were several FCS schools. There would have been many times in the early teens that the classes Jackson State is pulling in right now with Dion would have by far blown away anything Memphis had on the field. But you trump those things up, and again, deservedly so. And I'm not ambushing kids here. Look, like we don't know.
I think it all depends on the position the kids play, because the offensive line, are you going to throw a bunch of freshmen out on the offensive line?
Why not? But
No.
why? But no, I mean, but okay.
Or linebackers.
I get it, guys. But what? You can't develop an offensive lineman on the practice field.
No, 100%, John. You're right. You're right.
And if your
you can't develop it,
has stunk to this point.
But so to your point, and I know where you're going with this. To your point, if you've got a bunch of upperclassmen that suck, then why not give the ballyhooed freshman or sophomore a shot? Look, if at this, and I'm not saying we're there, and again, I'm not saying that our offensive linemen suck, but they kind of have. If the best bet for our offensive lineman is to fall down so the defense might trip over him on the way to the ball, then yes, put another kid out there and go, okay, let's see what you can do. And especially at this point where we're not winning the conference. That's not happening.
No, we can still win the conference mathematically.
We're not winning the conference.
Even I won't go there.
So
I did the math today. We actually still could. I mean, it's not happening, but we still could. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. But my point in all this is you're right. Why not give it a shot? Now, I have no problems with that if a kid is physically capable.
Yeah, it is
not
the
going to just get boat raced, because there is a mental side to this. But on the other side of that, you're right, John. You can't develop chemistry along the offensive line. And I remember Fuente, when we were getting our ass beat all those years, he was putting those kids on red shirts, and we're all like, oh, God. He's like, nope, can't win with them. But when they came off that red shirt year, he gave them that red shirt year to get bigger and stronger. He put them out there. And yes, we had a few problems at first, but by the next year, and we're in year 3 of the Silverfield experience here, which would be a great band name, by the way. We're in year 3 of the Silverfield experience. He should have had, I know 2020, you can say what you want about it, but it was still a year. We need to start seeing some results from these recruiting. We just do. And it needs to start the end of this year. We need to start seeing some development here, guys, because what we're seeing right now is the same team in 2020, is the same team in 2021, is the same team in 2022. 6-6, 7-5, something like that. And I haven't seen any progression. And I defy anybody to show me I'm wrong.
I can show you stats where you're wrong, but yeah.
but Bryan, that is a point, because if you just look at the raw numbers, if you just throw the numbers out there and look at the raw numbers, we're statistically a little better. But then when you start digging behind the numbers and you see that instead of averaging 6.1 yards per play, you're averaging 5.8 yards per play. And then you would look at me and say, John, what does 2.3 yards matter? Well, that's the difference in being 3rd and 3 and 3rd and 6. And Memphis is just right now, they have, when we had Mike and Justin and it was rolling, we had margin for error. Like, if you went out and Darrell Henderson didn't play great, that's okay. Calvin Austin or Anthony Miller is going to pick up that slack. The problem is right now we have such a thin razor edge that it really shows up. You know, football, I think it was Nick Saban a couple weeks ago, and it's been said 1,000 times. Football is one of the few sports where 10 guys doing their job can be completely derailed by one guy not doing his. And we've seen that a couple times this year on the offensive line. We've seen it from the running back position. We've seen it from the quarterback position. We've seen it from the pass rush. We've seen it from the secondary. Like, we've seen it where everybody is doing their thing except one dude. And that's when a big play happens. Like on that big long punt return, all it takes is one guy getting blocked down inside, and it's over. It's night because he's the guy that has to secure the edge and push the punt returner back inside. You never want to see a punt returner get outside the numbers. That is almost always bad news. And there's always one or two guys whose job it is to run wide and stay outside the numbers to force him back to where everybody else is. And you go back, you watch that, the muff punt, Eddie Lewis said, the sun got in my eyes. Well, then get the hell away from the ball.
I'm going to throw something out at you guys, and you guys just tell me that this is something that I've heard other people say, and I don't know that I can deny it. What somebody told me, I was texting back and forth. This was not somebody associated with the organization. This was a coach who coaches high school. He said what he sees at Memphis is somebody who is recruited well enough to overcome the fact that they can't coach.
I don't agree with that. I mean,
look, I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know that I don't think I agree with that either. But I just wanted you guys to hear that somebody texted that to me. And I think there's people that do think that.
Yeah, and I think Ryan, it's no secret, Ryan does struggle in some game management situations. That's one of the things about Bryan, about never having been a head coach before.
Right.
You've never had to run a 2-minute drill until literally you are what? 8-3, 4, 12, 30 games roughly into your tenure, give or take a couple games.
I think having that elder statesman in the room helps, like, Daryl Dickey with Mike Norvell. I know Silverfield had McIntyre, but McIntyre wasn't an offensive guy. He was a defensive guy. So
and they didn't really talk.
Yeah. And if you go back now, today, and you ask Justin Fuente who the most important person was for his run at Memphis, it was Daryl Dickey.
Yep.
Yeah.
And because the thing about, and this is where, we'll go back to Porter, where I kind of got sideways in my mind with him a little bit, is he had Mike DuBose on the staff and he wouldn't listen to him. Now, there was a bunch of other stuff that people said DuBose was trying to take his job and all that and whatever. What was the knock on Josh? He never had a old dude sitting on the bench. Like, how much better? And, for the record, and this again is another podcast for another time, because I was 100% opposed to Larry Brown being hired as coach at the University of Memphis. But how much has he helped Penny? Because guess what?
100%.
There is nothing that Larry Brown has not seen. Nothing. Absolutely zero that he has not seen. Even though his best, he's 40 years removed from this generation or whatever, like, there's nothing, because once you get between the lines, it's football, right? It's getting the ball across the goal line and scoring. And that's it.
It's all about prep, guys. And it's all about, have attention to detail, have everything. And a lot of this happens in the preseason and in the off season, where you get guys ready to get ready. That's what we used to say. You're getting ready to get ready. And I know that sounds weird, but I used to say that after 4th of July, I'm in football mode. Between that and Thanksgiving, I'm in football mode. I'm already, getting my mind right to, for all this. And I think right now what I'm seeing is a team that, Jeb's right about whack-a-mole, but it's more than that. I'm seeing a team that there's just not enough attention to detail of the little things, and it's caught up with us.
Yeah.
And we've been having that problem. And guys, it's been a problem last year, and it's a problem this year. It's a lack of attention to the little things. And I'm sorry, but that's what's going on.
That relates back, Larry, to what I always talk about when people want to blame an official for a loss. Now, there's probably about 25 other plays in the game that actually lost you the game. All right, so what? So the guy's too close to Eddie Lewis. On Tulane's first drive, they had 3 third downs of 9 yards or longer on their first 2 drives.
And they got them all.
And they stayed on the field. And on the last field goal drive, they had a 3rd and 14 that they had a 2nd and 19 that they got to 3rd and 13 and converted. But again, then it's special teams that pops up, or it's, poor man. Again, that last drive just rubbed me the wrong way. From the first 2 snaps where it took us, we got the ball with a minute and 50 seconds or a minute and 40. We ran 1 play and it took us 23 seconds to run the next play. And then we run 3 plays and then Jeb said the substitution broke me. Like, what difference when you are throwing the ball? And yes, I know picking up blitzes and all that, but Tulane's not blitzing. What difference could the particular running back, what difference could he possibly make other than maybe he, I forget which one it was. I think Sutton was Sutton was out and Brandon was in. I forget. It was one of those 2 guys that
right. I mean, you're not substituting or blocking. You're not substituting. It's not like this is a really simple thing. He's on the field. He stays on the field until you either score or you come off the field. And that's really it in a nutshell. And guys, I'll just leave it with this. It's just like the game. It's not one thing that has me concerned. It's that it's a whole bunch of little things all over the team that have me concerned.
I want to say something, Bryan, before you jump in here, because I've seen this a lot over the last couple of days. And I will take you into a back alley with a baseball bat if you try to tell me that we are back to the Larry Porter years.
Oh, no.
Because it's just like the Memphis basketball fans that think that, Memphis basketball kicked off their inaugural season around 2006, 2007. These are the same people that think Memphis didn't start playing football until 2013. You have no idea how bad we were. When Justin got here, famously, we had 7 offensive linemen. 7. You typically carry 17 to 20. We had 7. So if you're coming at me with that noise, that tells me 2 things. Number 1, you don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Idea.
And number 2, you're just being a miserable troll. Like it, and I said it to somebody's face this week. Like, stop. You have you're just trying. What is it? Jeff Weinberg, you say y'all are just arguing to be arguing. Like,
right? That's just dumb.
Dumb.
We're not even back to the Rip Shearer days. This is way better than that. It's way better than
Larry Porter. It's better than Chuck Stobart. Like, and Bryan.
Yeah, it's in the vein of Stobart. I mean,
well, you're 6-5 for 3 straight years.
Yeah, I mean, you're in that vein.
But Bryan, I think that's
and look. All I'm saying is what we're not seeing player development like we were seeing, and we're not seeing team development, and we're seeing a lot of problems in a lot of different areas, which means that it's lack of attention to detail by the coaching staff. No, it's not like Dempsey, Jeb. It's not like it.
Well, it could have been on Saturday. For those who don't know, Ray Dempsey got hired over Mac Brown back when I was a young pup, and started out 5-1-1, and then it was a mess, and ended up going 5-5-1, I think, and I think it went 3-8 the next year, whatever it was. But anyway, all right, Bryan. So we'll start with you here before we wrap up. Give me your most valuable player so far this year.
Let's see. To me, I'm going to go on the defensive side. The most valuable player to me, and I thought about this. It was between Zay Collins or Quindell Johnson. I can go Quindell because he has the 3 interceptions. But to me, I'll say Zay Collins. I mean, he leads the team in tackles. To me, he's that leader on the defense. I know Johnson's the leader, in the secondary, but man, it's so hard between those two. But yeah, just because he has more tackles, and I think he alters the game a little bit more, I'm going to say Collins.
I'm going to go on offense, and I'm going to say, after Sean Dykes left last year, there was a whole lot of questions about who was going to take that role and who was going to be the guy that Seth was going to look at. Caden Prinkscorn has played his tail off this year, and he has done an outstanding job in the run game. I know we haven't run the ball very well, but he's blocked fairly well. He's caught the ball, and he's just been all over the field offense. So give me Caden Prinkscorn.
So I kind of gave mine away earlier. I'm going to go Chris Howard, and here's why. And I'm pulling up stats kind of as we talk here. But you go back to last year and all of our struggles in the kicking game, all of our struggles. From the beginning where you're asking your punter to kick. Let's see, special teams. So this year, Chris Howard has kicked pretty well. I'm not going to say it. He's missed one extra point. And you go back to last year, and on field goals last year, sorry, this is real time. My internet's being cranky. You go back and you look, and we had to go for it on fourth down a lot last year because we couldn't kick the ball last year. We're successfully. We were 12 of 19 on field goals last year. So Chris Howard has given us the opportunity to be better than we have been. Bryan, but I struggled a little bit with it because when Quindell didn't play, boy, did we miss him.
Yep.
And, he's had 3 interceptions. He's lived up to all the preseason billing on a defense that has struggled at times by not being aggressive. He's made his best plays when we've been aggressive, but I had to go with Chris Howard. All right, Larry, we'll start with you this time. What is your biggest disappointment this season?
Lack of development by the offense. The offense has played well at times, but we're still not running the ball very well, and we still lack attention to detail. Seth has played his tail off to a degree, but he's your leading rusher. That's a huge disappointment, and just a lack of overall development by the offense, particularly the running game.
Your quarterback being your leading rusher, if you're not at Navy, is the offensive equivalent of a cornerback being your leading tackler on defense. It's never a good sign. Bryan, what's your biggest disappointment this season?
To me, it's just the little things. To me, last year there wasn't. I know. To me, last year the little things didn't kill you because I thought there was more big things last year than this year. This year, I mean, we can pinpoint the little things that the Seth Hennigan missing wide open receivers, missed tackles repeatedly, the drop catches repeatedly. It's these little things. So to me, it's just the little things that have snowballed to now. It's a giant thing. It's no longer these little things. It's a big, huge snowball right now.
I'm going to stay on special teams. I am so disappointed in our special teams outside of field goals and punts. I just and probably part of this is we were so spoiled. We've had great special teams with dynamic players. I asked Coach Silverfield about it. Gabe's banged up. Gabe's a little hurt. That's why he hasn't played. He didn't play as much in East Carolina and didn't play as much this week. He's banged up quite a bit. But boy, just the basic crap, like just again, punt, block, not getting outside the numbers, running into the kicker, just those types of things. Kickoffs, not looking for the ball on an onside kick. Again, just one guy not doing what he's supposed to do. And the problem is special teams has gotten progressively worse every week. Like, it's not like they were lights out, because we're our return yards on kickoffs are about the same, but now the return yards, unless you've got a really dynamic, explosive returner, which we don't have right now, because everybody is kicking the ball into the back of the end zone. Like I think touchbacks are like 75% of kickoffs now. So you're not getting it out of the return game. We get almost nothing out of punt returns. That hurts us a little bit. I'm not sure the right guy's returning punts. And that's not just because he fumbled on Saturday. It goes back to, I think it was Rip when Cole Hoppy played here. That was a running joke. Like we called him fair catch because that's all. But that was all he was asked to do was just field the ball. Just catch the ball. That's all. Wave your hand and catch the ball. That's all you got to do. But we don't get anything out of punt. We have, I'm trying to remember, when's the last time we blocked a kick? I don't just right off the top of my head remember. And, we weren't Beamer ball by any stretch of the imagination, but we could get plays. And I really thought Saturday, and this was probably one of the most disappointing, I thought that they were probably better defensively than we were on offense. Our defense was probably a little better than theirs, but our athleticism should have dominated them in special teams. Like, just should have. That's where we have an advantage over most teams by recruiting fast, strong players is our athleticism. And to me, it was just a microcosm of the season. Just it's okay to get nothing out of teams, but it's not okay when teams are costing you the game. Special teams has cost us, I can think of 5 games in the last 2 years. All right, so one final thing before we go here. Of course, Memphis is off this week. We'll have Bandmasters at the Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium on Saturday. Looking forward to that. How do we finish? Bryan, we'll start with you. How do we finish?
2-2. So end of the season 6-6. I want to say 7-5, but I just think one game. It'll be whether it be UCF or you. One of those games we'll be talking about the little things where Memphis could have won but didn't. I think that's how it ends up. But 6-6, going to a bowl game.
I agree, 2-2, and we were texting kind of back and forth on Saturday. Boy, that Tulsa is not going to be a gimme. It's not. I don't see us beating UCF. I don't see us beating SMU. I don't. I'm sorry. The way this team's playing right now, that's just not going to happen. I think you're looking at 6-6. And the same conversations that we were having last year will be this coming off season.
Twitter.
They can finish better. I'm not saying Memphis can't win against UCF or SMU. I think they can win. I just don't think they will win because just the way, like you said, the way this year has gone, something will pop up and bite Memphis in the butt. But I can see them winning. I'm just not going to predict them to win.
My Twitter is @John_Rivals. You can bring the hate. I don't really care anymore. 1-3. I think the only team we beat is North Alabama. And I don't
disagree with that, John. For the record,
this isn't a heart discussion. I think the Memphis football program is broken this year. I think their spirit is just shattered. I was impressed with the second half at Tulane, but I think the East Carolina loss probably hurt a lot more than the Houston one sucked, but I think that East Carolina game broke the Tigers. And it's really hard because they have, other than the bowl streak, they have nothing left. And you've got a bunch of young kids. Coach Silverfield talks about that all the time. Like 68% of our kids are sophomores and redshirt, whatever they are. We only have a couple seniors. And boy, that East Carolina loss was after you got kicked in the nuts against Houston, you got punched in the throat by East Carolina, and then you go out and you fall behind 35-0. And again, to your credit, you fought back. And Bryan, your article was also dead on something last year. We were all down in the dumps and miserable We were 4-4, and I think we were 1-3 in the conference. I think we'd only played the 4 games. And they come out and they beat SMU the next week.
SMU last year, to me, is better than UCF this year.
UCF is not great.
That's why I say Memphis can win. That's where I'm pulling back.
Look,
I think
I'm
you
not
guys
saying
are
we can't.
rubbing off on me.
I'm telling you that the team that I saw play Tulane will not beat UCF.
Yeah, I don't think it's an effort. Let me back up, and because I don't want anybody to get this misconstrued. Let me be abundantly clear, as I like to say. It's not an effort thing. It's a mental block. When you get hit in the nuts and then get punched in the throat, I'll give you another basketball example of this. David Vaughn. David Vaughn was a fantastic player. He blew out his knee against Arkansas. He was never the same after that because he was always a little skittish about putting weight on it, and I just think this team is just their psyche is hurt, and
they're waiting for something bad to happen.
And I think maybe the bye week, Bryan, helps that a little bit because you do have a chance to kind of catch your breath. But you're also,
and I guess in a writer's example, to me, it would be like if a great writer has a writer's block. This bye week could be a perfect time to get away. Just like a writer, sometimes you quit thinking about it, go off and do something else, clear your mind, then come back, and you can finish your novel, finish your book, whatever you're doing.
And the problem you've got coming up next week is you're 1-16 against UCF all time.
Why don't you just bring that up right now? Let's just,
Hey, let's get it out. It's either 1-15 or 1-16. So that's
that one
team.
win. What coach did that?
Yeah. Moving on.
Okay.
That was in the COVID year.
That was the game I tried to leave like 4 times.
It was a great game, but
it was a great game.
Good, excellent point. Touche. But it's like when Memphis used to play a UAB all the time. They just had our number. Like it was inexplicable sometimes, but they just had our number. But I obviously I don't see us losing to North Alabama, but
no.
I worry about
that Tulsa game's not going to be a gimme. And we were texting that Saturday, and I remember thinking, "Are we sure?" And Brian's like 95 whatever percent. I'm
90. I think I said 97.5%.
Whatever. The point was, I said, "Are you?"
I'm pretty sure they'll win that one.
And I am not.
Well, but see,
for a lot of reasons.
Here would be the most Memphis thing to do: beat UCF on next Saturday, and then lose to Tulsa by 3 touchdowns. Like that. That would be the most Memphis thing of the last 3 or 4 years to do: is beat a team you have no business.
You beat UCF, and you're like, "Oh, we could actually go 4-0, right?" And then you get never mind.
Yeah, I mean. But look, I
hope we do, though. I hope we do. And
I want to be wrong. I want us to be 3-1, 4-0. I mean, I want Memphis to win out, and because it makes for a much better offseason.
Oh, these shows are a lot more fun.
Yeah, when Memphis is winning, it's a lot more fun to do this than when you're slogging through another 6-6 season. So, all right, well, we've gone on long enough. Bryan, what have you got going this week on the buy over there?
Oh, I will check out the 2000 and 2001 recruiting class, and I'll do a write-up on them and their, their productivity so far on the Tigers team, because I think that'll be good for a good read.
I posted today all the different bowl projections, and boy, are they all over the place now. Everything from Larry's favorite city in America, Shreveport, Bossier City, Shreveport. There's some
Fenway.
There's a lot of Fenway in there. There's a couple Bocas. There's a Gasparilla. There's several Birminghams. There's even a military in there and a first responder. So they're all over the place. But as you read these things, these guys don't know where people are going. Like,
no,
it's just
a guess at this point. Another article I will have up more than likely this weekend, because I'm waiting for a couple of kids to respond back to me, is I've already spoken to a bunch of the commits. What are the commits thinking about this season? And are they still committed to Memphis? So look for that this weekend.
Hell, they're probably thinking I can play right now.
So we'll end on that note. For the best co-host in all the land, Larry Marley and Bryan and Moss, this is John Maddox signing off. Thanks for tuning in. We will see everybody next week.